Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavapa Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavapa Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming this morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve by these discussions today. We're going to continue with our readings on the Transcendental Diaries, and we'll be discussing Srila Prabhupada's wonderful pastimes. Om Jnanatmirandasya Jnanangina Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshadarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchaka Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class today, so that we can appreciate Srila Prabhupada's pastimes and his teachings all the more. This is chapter 4, titled Honolulu. Okay. It's May 6th, 1976. Prabhupada walked around Magic Island. So Magic Island is one peninsula on the island of Hawaii and this area of Honolulu in particular. Sri Prabhupada was staying here. So Prabhupada walked around Magic Island again, discussing vegetarianism among other things. He also brought up the subject during his short class on Srimad Bhagavatam on Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 2, explaining where it fits in with our philosophy, and that's vegetarianism. Sometimes this morning we were talking about vegetarian and non-vegetarian. Our mission is not to make a non-vegetarian a vegetarian. No. Our mission is that either you are vegetarian or non-vegetarian, it doesn't matter, you become Krishna conscious. That is our mission. To become vegetarian is not very good qualification. It is better than the non-vegetarian, but that is not the ultimate solution. The ultimate solution is when you become a lover of God. So we are not preaching this vegetarianism. So this is a very interesting point. You may find it a little bit of a, maybe a controversial point as well. Because, well, vegetarianism is, it's quite an integral part of spiritual life. But there's a higher principle than just vegetarianism alone. Right? We were speaking the other day about how there are morals in society, and it's important that everybody adheres to them so that we establish a basic standard of civility. But then, when we come to spiritual life, we're aiming for higher than that moral principle. We're aiming for attaining a transcendental level. And on that transcendental level, we're focused more on engaging in devotional service to Krishna than just the moral principles. And that's because in the course of your devotional service to Krishna, you'll be able to fulfill all moral principles, because all of the troublesome things to the heart, all our bad qualities and bad tendencies will all be destroyed. Right? Nasta prayasha abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya. So our focus is on that devotional service. We're not so focused on vegetarianism or non-vegetarianism. And simply because if we focus on labels, all kinds of labels, like they are in the material world, right? Labels of nationality, South African, Chinese, Indian, labels of race, black, white, colored, labels of vegetarian, non-vegetarian. Then, fixated on those labels, our consciousness will carry us into another life where we'll be able to take on a label, something that our consciousness is focused on. And the ultimate goal will not be achieved, which is attaining the spiritual planets, Krishna's planets, through devotional service. So rather than focusing on labels, we focus our consciousness on attaining that ultimate goal, attaining Krishna. This is what our emphasis on is in spiritual life, as Prabhupada is speaking about here. Okay. So the next section, after discussions with Srila Prabhupada, Pusta Krishna Swami wrote to Radha Vallabh Das at the Los Angeles BBT that Hayagreeb Das, Prabhupada's original editor, should immediately come to complete the philosophy book project. Years ago, Srila Prabhupada's former secretary, Shyamasundar Das, recorded conversations with His Divine Grace in which Prabhupada gave the Vedic critique of various Western philosophies. These were to form the basis of a book to be distributed at colleges and universities, challenging the preeminence of Western thought in modern educational institutions. For various reasons, it has not been completed, and Prabhupada urged Hayagreeva's involvement. So this is a very significant achievement of Srila Prabhupada, actually presenting Vedic thought in terms of Vaishnava theology. And that's because up to the time that Srila Prabhupada went to the West, the dominant idea of what Vedic thought was represented by impersonalist or Advaitin philosophy, right? Where the ultimate reality is the formless divine. Okay? So this was presented by gurus and yogis and other ambassadors of the Hindu religion. Right? We remember Vivekananda famously preaching in Chicago. But the Advaitin philosophy, the impersonalist philosophy, does not adequately represent Vedic thought. And that's because in the Advaitin or the impersonalist philosophy, the ultimate reality of God is formless. There is no allowance for form, right? Because in this philosophy, form is an illusion. But yet we find in so many of the Vedic scriptures, right, so many verses from the Upanishads, there's descriptions of form, right? That God moves, that He accepts things, that He sees, that He hears. So basically it means that Advaitin philosophy does not explain this adequately. Right? But the philosophy of Bhakti explains that God can have many aspects, many forms as He desires, and included in those aspects is the formless, right? Referred to as impersonal Brahman. But higher than impersonal Brahman is the most supreme aspect of God, and that is His form, right? His transcendental form, which is called Para Brahman. So in that way, Vaishnava philosophy, Bhakti Yoga, is actually, we could say, the most complete explanation of Vedic thought. It explains, well, all other religious traditions as well, because it explains how one can achieve the heavenly planets. Right? This is in particular believed by the Abrahamic religions. It explains how in religions like Buddhism one can attain nihilism, right, which is very similar to the Advaitin philosophy. But more than that, because these are all temporary destinations, it explains how one can attain the permanent destination through devotional service, attaining service to the form of God. So this is unparalleled. Srila Prabhupada teaching this. And it's very important that this full and complete explanation of Vedic philosophy is juxtaposed against modern thought, because we remember at the time students were quite disillusioned with Western philosophy. Now, thanks to Srila Prabhupada's effort, they would have the proper understanding of Vedic philosophy in order to give themselves a complete understanding of what the Vedas actually means, and how it certainly supersedes Western philosophy. So, besides Srila Prabhupada accomplishing something extraordinary like this, he is also so practical and so accomplished in other areas as well. We're reading in the rest of this chapter how he's giving the same Prabhu Radha Vallabh advice on Ayurvedic treatment for Rameshwar Maharaj, right? which is actually the correct treatment as compared to the treatment that Rameshwar had gotten from an Ayurvedic physician. Okay, Srila Prabhupada said he should rather be taking rock candy and preparations from green papaya than what the physician had prescribed. And then Srila Prabhupada was giving advice to Akshayananda Swami about how to get measurements from Vrindavan of all the altars, so that the temple in Fiji could be designed. And then he was preparing to go to Washington, where his disciple Vrishakapi Das, the president there, had arranged 300 important people, educators, politicians, and scientists who may come to see Srila Prabhupada. And we also know about Srila Prabhupada, the expert cook, Srila Prabhupada, the expert musician, even recognized by George Harrison, Srila Prabhupada, the expert accountant, right? Srila Prabhupada, the expert counselor. This is the extraordinary abilities of the Acharya. And Srila Prabhupada also addressed a devotee in this paragraph who was concerned about financing for the Gurukuls. Srila Prabhupada had a vision for education for the children of ISKCON, and he considered it was very important to him. He wanted this devotee to do it very nicely and thoughtfully, so he told him just to engage in that service alone. And another important point in this paragraph is that when Vrishakapi was arranging for all these eminent members of Washington Society to meet Srila Prabhupada, he was also, of course, trying to arrange a meeting with the President of the United States, right? It is Washington. And Srila Prabhupada wasn't that interested. He said if it happens, then it's good. But Srila Prabhupada was more interested in meeting a Mr. Twohi, because this person was handling a house which we want to acquire to house our Delhi temple. So far the president is concerned, you can try to arrange, but it's not the most important thing. How amazing is that? For any other person, meeting the president might be considered a very important thing. But the Acharya's vision is much broader than ours. Right? He can see things from a transcendental perspective. So for him, the important person to see was this very fortunate Mr. Twohi. Okay. So the next section is about cooking for Srila Prabhupada. Cooking for Srila Prabhupada has been something of a problem. After my disastrous attempt in New Zealand, I left it to the local devotees to make arrangements here. One of the girls, Kusha Dasi, tried for the first couple of days, but Prabhupada complained she used too much salt. Before I could speak to her personally, word got out and she became discouraged. Then she suddenly was taken to the hospital suffering from a bad infection. So yesterday I had another go. It was another complete failure, and Prabhupada repeated his criticism. I am simply too dull to learn. Prabhupada's digestion is so delicate that a constant change of cooks can mean serious health problems for him. In evident frustration at my incompetence, he asked for the 3-tier cooker and some burners to be brought upstairs to his room, declaring that he would cook for himself. I was completely downcast that I was so useless, I couldn't even cook properly. So Shukadev Prabhu, the temple president, offered to try. Prabhupada consented, and today's lunch turned out to his satisfaction, except for the dal, which Shukadev had cooked down to a mush. Prabhupada said that it was untouchable. But that was his only complaint. So Shukadev is going to do it every day now. So in general, the disciple endeavors to try and do the very best in the service for the spiritual master, right? Especially because here the service has implications for the well-being of the spiritual master, right? A change of cooks, things like having too much of salt, it has health implications. Right? Especially Srila Prabhupada is elderly and he had very delicate digestion. So it's important that we endeavor in these circumstances that the best person performs the service. But then we also find that the spiritual master may engage somebody else in a service who's not really even average at it. Right? By their wisdom. We remember Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He didn't engage the best singers in kirtan. He engaged the ones who would be able to improve the spiritual consciousness of those who were hearing when they were singing. So this is something that an expert spiritual master can do. He can decide which disciple should perform a service or not, for that disciple's benefit ultimately and for everybody else's benefit as well. And Srila Prabhupada explains that in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22, Text 7, that this is the actual prerogative of the spiritual master, to be able to engage a disciple according to their ability. The problem, of course, is that we see the ability from the outside, and the spiritual master knows the ability from the inside. And he knows truly what a disciple is capable of. So in the same paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is engaging Govinda Dasi in her talent, right, which is art, so that the deities in Fiji would be formed and then installed. But he also engaged other devotees of the time in things that they didn't think that they were probably the best in. Right? We remember how he wanted Yamuna Dasi to sing repeatedly, and she was very humble. But even George Harrison thought she was amazing and wanted to turn her into a rock star. Okay, so the spiritual master recognizes these things. This is what he can do for a disciple, engage them in a service that brings out the very best in them. So, needless to say, she didn't accept George's offer, but we get to hear her every morning during the Shringar Aarti. So now the next section is titled or subtitled May 7th, 1976. Srila Prabhupada is continuing to lead the repetitive chanting of the Sanskrit at the start of class himself. Okay, this is the standard for us that we also follow. Skipping shlokas 3 to 5, he read out this morning's verse, Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 6. So, of particular importance in that verse, it's not quoted here, but we'll just read the first 2 lines. Adhuneha mahabhaga yataiva narakan naraha. Right? So that first line, Adhuneva Mahabhaga, Maharaj Parikshit is addressing Shukadev Goswami. So we continue the text, which describes Shukadev Goswami as Mahabhaga. So here Shukadev Goswami, this is Srila Prabhupada speaking. So here Shukadev Goswami is addressed as Mahabhaga. Maha means great and Bhaga means fortunate. Because he is very fortunate, he is describing Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, Bhagavatam, the same word Bhaga comes, Bhagavat. Vat, this word is used when the meaning is possessing. So it means Bhaga is fortune, and Vat is another word meaning possession. So possession of good fortune, possession of fortune. This is Srimad Bhagavatam that possesses the greatest fortune, Krishna. Asti arte vatup, Bhagavan, Bhagyavan, and Bhagavat. Right? Bhagavat means one who has power to possess the Supreme Lord. Right? He is called Bhagavat. There are 2 kinds of Bhagavat. As in our Srimad Bhagavatam verse above, we read Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. The Sevaya is to the 2 Bhagavatas. We're going to describe those here. One is Granta Bhagavat and one is Person Bhagavat. A devotee, he is called Bhagavat, and the book in which the pastimes or characteristics of Bhagavan is described is called Bhagavat. So this Srimad Bhagavat. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining to them the concept of the 2 Bhagavats, the 2 possessors of the great fortune, the 2 possessors of Krishna. Right? This is the book Bhagavat that possesses Krishna by containing the histories of his pastimes, of the pastimes of his dear devotees, which all involve devotional service to him, as well as the person Bhagavat who also possesses Krishna. Right? 2 possessors of great fortune. And by us serving them, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, we get good fortune as well. So this Srimad Bhagavat, Shri means beauty. Again Vat, Shri Mat or Shri Vat. Shri Vat. Shri means very beautiful. So every shloka you'll find very, very beautiful. 5,000 years ago these verses were written. There is no comparison. Nobody can write such verses even up to date. It was written by Vyasadeva Veda Vyas. As we sat in the small but crowded temple room listening attentively to his potent lecture, it made me realize that as a Mahabhagavat devotee, Srila Prabhupada is incomparable. No one is able to give such astute insights into everyday life. Right? Not just the Vedas, but Ayurveda, schooling, music, construction, culture. Right? This is Srila Prabhupada. And such lucid explications of the Vedic literature as he, right? The true explanation of Vedic literature. He is truly the representative of Srila Vyasadeva, and we neophytes are Mahabhaga, to be daily sitting at his feet. Right? So, Srila Prabhupada again in his expertness in explaining these terms, he is giving the devotees an understanding about what real good fortune means. Right? Good fortune is a relative term. Everybody has an idea. But whatever that idea is in the material world, it all comes to an end. The real good fortune is having this association with Srila Prabhupada and other great devotees, and having the instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Srila Giriraj Govardhana Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. So we have that good fortune to be able to serve both, to be able to serve the great devotees and this wonderful literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore we are all also Mahabhaga. So the next episode, it's very instructive to all of us. During Guru Puja, a long-haired young man presented Srila Prabhupada with a huge set of tulsi beads. As they lay on the base of the Vyasasana, I saw Guru Kripa Maharaj glance first at them and then at me. He had a possessive look in his eye. After Prabhupada stepped down from the Vyasasana, I gathered them up with his other paraphernalia and put them in my room. The same devotee had given His Divine Grace a similar set of Japamala last year, but he had not used them and had left them behind. Just after breakfast, Prabhupada called me in asking to see the beads. He liked the feel of them and so told me to string them properly and have a bead bag made so that he could chant on them. I happily spent the morning restringing them while Kusha Dasi made an attractive, giant-sized bag from saffron-colored Thai silk. As I sat knotting them, Guru Kripa Maharaj happened to walk in. "They're mine," he declared forcefully, as if to dissuade me of any thoughts of keeping them for myself. "No, they're not, Maharaj," I smiled reprovingly. "They're Srila Prabhupada's. He's going to use them." Guru Kripa had speculated that Prabhupada would do the same as last year and, as the GBC, had mentally laid his claim. Embarrassed, Maharaj immediately corrected himself for his offense, "Hare Krishna," and then left the room. So we've all made this mistake at some point or the other, right? We wanted something for ourselves, and we think that because it's spiritually related, it's okay. The desire is fine. But we have to understand that even though the object is spiritual, our desire is not spiritual. Right? We're still on the platform of the false ego. This is the truth. And when we come to that platform, that Brahma Bhuta level, then we're actually on a spiritual level, spiritual platform. And from there, actually, we don't want anything. Right? We consider everything as everyone else's possessions. Of course, a devotee will see that as Krishna's possessions. And we see everyone as equal. So up to that point, it's offensive to actually lay claim on something. Right? It belongs to Krishna. This we know from the Ishopanishad. And we have to be mindful, because we can imagine how this could have turned out to be quite a fight if Srila Prabhupada hadn't said that he wanted those beads, right? And this is how many misunderstandings actually happen in spiritual life, when devotees want something and they think that it's okay to want it because it's spiritual, because it's Maha, because it's for Krishna. Right? We have to actually examine ourselves but carefully before we so forcefully want things, because it may just be coming from our desire to possess it. It may not really be a spiritual desire. So this is something subtle, right? So it's something we have to be aware of, because we might miss it. So the next section is describing how Tamal Krishna, Pushta Krishna, Drishtadyumna, Guru Kripa, and the writer of the Diaries had a very long and interesting darshan with Srila Prabhupada in the evening. Srila Prabhupada was initially discussing aspects of Chinese culture. And then he said something, that people in the communist countries must be dissatisfied. Right? Using himself as an example, he said that he was staying in his room almost 24 hours, but by choice. So it's all right. But if someone ordered him, "You cannot leave," right? You cannot leave the room, then it would become intolerable. Right? So we all know this feeling. When we're running around doing service and we forget to take prasadam, then it's sort of okay, you don't really think about it. But the day someone tells you it's a fast and you can't take prasadam, it's all you can think of. It drives you crazy. So Srila Prabhupada was explaining that this is what happens in the communist countries, right? If I'm choosing to stay indoors by force, then if I'm choosing to stay indoors myself, it's one thing. But then if someone's forcing you into rules and regulations, then it's another. So in the same way, when they were artificially holding people back from culture, it just made the culture more attractive, right? And that played into Srila Prabhupada's master plan. The psychology is that the communist-controlled people are oppressed and will eventually demand change. Everything is strictly controlled and no one has anything. He recalled that when he visited Moscow for a week, the only fruit they could buy was strawberries. It was very difficult to find a taxi, and even when they got one, the taxi driver begged for more money. The tourist buses, he said, that's Srila Prabhupada, were worse than the ones in India. So Srila Prabhupada was making the point that the promise of the communist countries were that there would be enough for everyone. Right? It was deemed to be a model of success, but Srila Prabhupada is saying instead of everyone having everything, no one has anything. And that's the reality. It's the exact opposite. And therefore people from those countries have been constantly trying to escape the situation. Russia has had to begin liberalizing, Srila Prabhupada observed, because they're afraid of another revolution, especially after Stalin's reign. And Srila Prabhupada was right, as he always was. Right? Because all these communist countries have actually had to liberalize in some way or the other to avoid revolution. He strongly encouraged Tamal Krishna Maharaj to use the black market systems in the Eastern Bloc to spread his books. Just find out what is the venues to push our books as much as possible. This will be your only business. All over the world, see how the books can be pushed. He didn't mind if the black marketeers make money from us, as long as the books go out. Let them make good profit. Sate satyamacharate, macharata. Where there is trickery, you become trickery. Krishna's play. To those who are plain, Krishna is very kind and plain. To those who are tricky, all right, I am also tricky. We shall adopt all the means of the materialistic persons, simply for Krishna. So this is a very important cautionary note. Srila Prabhupada authorized the black market here, but it was for a completely spiritual purpose in a fairly desperate circumstance under the direction of a pure devotee. And very important criteria. So if we can't tick those off, we can't do the same. Okay, we can't engage in the same purposes. And Srila Prabhupada is very different. Like we said, he was on a transcendental level. Right? He could see things as they were, and he knew what Krishna's desire was. So he knew where he could bend the rules. Right? We don't have that vantage point. And we can see that his interest wasn't to make money at all. He didn't care if the players in this market were the ones making the money. His only concern as a pure devotee was to make sure the books go out. Right? Our concerns could be questionable because we're still in the false ego. So this is not the standard for all of us. But it was something that Srila Prabhupada wanted to do, and the takeaway from this is how much he wanted his books to go out. Right? This is something that we need to understand. Prabhupada said that as soon as our movement grows stronger than the communist movement, we shall finish it. That I shall tell you later. You become a little strong. We cannot allow them. Because Krishna's policy is paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants. That's Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 8. You have to take that policy. He said that as far as the common people are concerned, they have to be shown mercy and be convinced by Sankirtan. But big leaders like Mao will fall only by force, although this cannot be done at the present time. So Srila Prabhupada considered the governments that were against the spread of Krishna consciousness to be miscreants, right? Dushkriti. And we know that Krishna has a policy of dealing with miscreants. Okay? But again, that's something that Krishna understands, and he knows what time he'll do that in, and Srila Prabhupada as a pure devotee understands, and we don't. Right? So we don't go toppling governments either. Right? What we should do is what Srila Prabhupada is advising here. We focus on the innocent, the common people, and we engage in Sankirtan. And we show them mercy. Right? As for when the fight will happen, as for the show of force, Srila Prabhupada speaking about when to finish them, that will happen in Krishna's time. Krishna has his understanding. The pure devotee has the understanding. And Krishna has so many agents, right? In particular time. Time is Krishna's manifestation, kalosmi. And through time, Krishna finishes everybody. And all of these dictators are all gone. The regimes are mostly collapsed in most places. And where they are still standing, they will be in time. And Krishna consciousness is only flourishing. He envisions a big demand for his books in these countries. When Tamal Krishna expressed his delight at the thought of seeing Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, the most widely read black market book in Russia, Prabhupada smiled. Then that will create revolution. That's exactly what's happened. Right? Srila Prabhupada's books did create a revolution in the minds and the hearts of the people of the former Soviet Union. Tamal shook his head in appreciation. These books are very revolutionary. You are very strong. You have put everything in very clear-cut, strong words. You have attacked everyone who is not Krishna conscious as fools and rascals. Srila Prabhupada laughed. This is fact, it's not exaggeration. So let's think about it. Srila Prabhupada had done that, right? He had said it as it was wherever he went in the world. And he went to communist countries. And he went to other countries where there were quite strong and violent communist movements, like in India and areas where the Naxalites were active. We remember fly or die. And Srila Prabhupada did neither. And nothing happened to him. And there was a time in the world when assassinations were quite common. Right? World leaders were all at risk. And yet Srila Prabhupada moved around freely, no bodyguards, and nothing happened to him. And that just proves that when you're performing your services to Krishna, according to Krishna's desire, nothing can stop you. Nothing stopped Srila Prabhupada. They discussed a little about Harikesh Maharaj, who is reported to be doing well in Europe, visiting various communist countries like Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Poland. He and his party drive into the countries in vans loaded with books, secreted in false bottoms, and then distribute them. Prabhupada appreciated his endeavors, encouraging us all to pursue this program of book distribution. You are all intelligent. You can plan. The aim is how to distribute books. That is first consideration. So we don't have government suppressing us. We don't have threats to our lives when we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. So then we have to ask ourselves, what is it internally that's holding us back? Because that's our real problem. Right? We're getting some perspective here, what the actual opposition is like. And if we're not facing this opposition, then we should be making every effort to distribute Prabhupada's books. Right? We still have to be creative, like Ranga Maharaj's team. Right? But that creativity is just how to overcome the material nature. Otherwise, we're very fortunate to have such an open field for book distribution. So we really have to focus on what was important to Srila Prabhupada, how much he wanted this, right? Distribute books. That is first consideration. It's first consideration for all of us, everywhere. He ended the meeting with a figurative description of the body and its different parts. Just last night he said that in his Bhagavatam work he had translated a verse which compared the body, mind and senses to a chariot and weapons. He said that these weapons are honed and kept sharp by serving the spiritual master. When the spiritual master is happy, Krishna helps by giving the devotee the strength needed to wield the weapons. Then he said, we will fight with the enemies of Krishna, conquer material existence, and at last give up the weapons and go back home, back to Godhead. He then asked Puster Krishna Maharaj to play back his evening's dictations. It was from Canto 7, Chapter 15, Text 45. This is actually what we're doing in devotional service. People may think that we're just like following rules for the sake of it, and denying ourselves so many pleasures that they enjoy. But what we're actually achieving is mastery of the self. Right? Real and true mastery of the self. Because everybody else who appears to be free is an absolute and complete slave to their senses. Right? When the senses want something, the mind and the intelligence can do absolutely nothing independent of that desire. I challenge anybody. Right? The mind and the intelligence, everything the body, everything becomes fixed on whatever somebody wants to achieve. And therefore we hear so much, I don't know what I was thinking. You weren't thinking. It's because your senses were doing all the thinking for you. This happens. Right? That's what the basis of material society, material nature is. So everyone else is actually a slave, rather than those who are following the rules of spiritual life. On the other side, though, when we're trying to control the senses, we can't take like 4 plates of prasadam. We can't focus on hearing the kirtan just because of its musical quality rather than the holy name. This is also not sense control. We're endeavoring for sense control because when we reach that control of the senses, then we're actually eligible for self-realization. At that point, real devotional service begins. Up till then, we're only in the practice of devotional service. So we may think, okay, I'm not really a renunciant yet. You may not be wearing saffron, but we're all endeavoring for renunciation, right? Because life is short. Life is very short. We all have our Maharaj Parikshit moments, I call it, where the material life kind of reminds us that time is ticking. We had it a few days ago. We were in an accident when we were leaving the temple. Yeah. And then at other times it may be a doctor's visit. That also happens to me quite a bit. Okay, there's another reason why you could, expire a little early. It happens to all of us. It reminds us of that story about the guy who wanted one wish from God to know or to have some warning about when death was going to occur, so he would prepare for it. And then all of a sudden, death was there after a lifetime of enjoying himself. And he's like, but I wanted warnings. Where was my warnings? Right? And the warnings came in terms of a little bit of gray hair, a little bit of back pain. Right? So even when we're younger, we may not have those things, but we're seeing people all around us dying, and we're not thinking about the urgency of the message. Okay? This is why Maharaj Yudhishthira, when he was asked, what's the most amazing thing? The most amazing thing is that people are dying everywhere, all around, right? Even when they're children, even when they're youths. And everyone else is thinking it's not going to happen to me. Right? So renunciation is serious. It's something that we have to endeavor for. We have at any age, and we have the tools to be able to do it. Right? Like Srila Prabhupada says, serving the spiritual master sincerely. Chanting the holy names with more attention, with more focus. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Endeavoring to hear attentively Srimad Bhagavatam. Serving the devotees sincerely. These are all the ways that we've been given, right, in order to attain renunciation at any stage of life, so that whenever that call comes, we're ready to answer it. Okay. So the last section. In the late evening, as I massaged him, Prabhupada had me take the part of a scientist while he defeated every argument I could think of. Of course, I am not a scientist, not a student of science, but I may be taken as an ordinary man whose vision of the world has been shaped and colored by years of science-based schooling and social pressures conveyed through mass media. Srila Prabhupada has destroyed whatever little faith I might have in the credibility of the materialists and their propaganda. So this is important because with the destruction of one's faith in materialism, it increases our faith in Krishna. Right? It's reciprocal. Just like with our detachment from material life, we get attachment to Krishna. The problem is when those who are not engaged in devotional service try to become detached. Right? Those who are on the path of mystic yoga, jnana, they may get detached from material life, but they don't have any attachment, right, to cling to. And Srila Prabhupada gave a very nice analogy for us to understand how precarious this is. So, if one rejects the land, becomes detached from the land and flies off in an airplane or takes off in a boat, there's only so much time that one can spend in these vessels. Right? Eventually, one is not going to find another shelter like the land, so one will have to return. So in the same way, those who try to become detached from material life, they don't find any shelter. They don't find anything to actually do, even. So eventually they come back to material life. Right? And then, like Srila Prabhupada describes, even if they become renounced, they take up the engagements of those who are in material life again, because opening schools and hospitals, doing charitable things, they're still on the platform of material goodness, like we explained in the beginning. And those who are aiming for transcendence want to go beyond that. So when we become detached from material life, we have to find consequent attachment in spiritual life in order to remain on that transcendental platform and not go back. This is what devotional service does for us. So this is actually very important, even considering Srila Prabhupada, because all of his arguments made us detached from material life, but his personality, his example, his love, his care, that made us attached to spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada's instructions to us gave us or made us lose our faith in material life, but his personal example made us have faith in Krishna consciousness. That's the Acharya. He gave a practical example of how mad people are. At the time of his death, a man he had known pleaded with the doctors, "Please give me just 4 more years of life so that I can finish my business." Shaking his head at the foolishness, he said, as though doctors could give life. Now look, this chapter allocation was very random. But I'm going to confess that I'm a doctor, and we try very sincerely and seriously by all means to prolong life. But Srila Prabhupada's right, we can't do it. We can't give life. Exercises like this strengthen my trust in the Vedic version of life and the universe unlimitedly. As for Srila Prabhupada, he simply loves to preach, and his sense of duty to his spiritual master and Krishna impel him to deliver true knowledge and defeat ignorance wherever and whenever it may be found. Right? It's a very wonderful conclusion. Right? I hope that we'll all also be able to develop our love for preaching. Right? Even if we have to give ourselves a little push to get out there, overcome our internal obstacles. And maybe also cultivate, right, the sense of duty to Srila Prabhupada to keep impelling others, impelling ourselves, overcoming our own ignorance and the ignorance of others, so that everyone can get this opportunity of devotional service and attain that ultimate goal. Okay, so thank you all so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki. Are there any questions or comments or corrections? Anything to clarify? Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class, and also thank you for bringing out that aspect of of death, which is like, it can happen at any time to anyone. So we should not think that because we are young and it won't happen to us, right? Because we see on South African roads every day what happens, and then there's crime and and all of these things. So this is like, it's so near to us, we can actually visualize it every day in the paper and on the streets like this. So we should take heed to that warning that death can happen at any time. And there's many examples in the Bhagavatam as well, like King Chitraketu and his son and how he. So Prabhupada again and again he brings this out. We find that materialists say, don't talk about death. We don't want to hear about it. But that's a reality that we have to face every day. Right? That death is there and it's going to come sooner or later. And this, as you were saying, this lifespan is very short. And, it could just happen in a flash. So thank you for bringing that out. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. I was actually thinking about it yesterday because I was preaching to one of my friends. And we're not fatalistic if we are focused on death, if we think about it carefully, because we're trying to make that experience pleasant. That's our focus. Everyone else who's trying to avoid it is guaranteed not to have a happy experience. This much is for certain. That's why they live in that fear. But our focus is on actually how to pass that test smoothly, as so many devotees have done, and how to ensure that that destination afterwards will be so auspicious that we'll actually want to achieve it. So the focus is not fatalistic at all. It's actually very positive. It's regarding something that human society fears so much, with maybe even anticipation when someone is advanced enough, right? Of basically the next service that one will achieve in the Lord, for the Lord. Okay, thank you, Mataji. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki.